All right, let's go ahead and start with the warm-up. So it asks us to select the expression that represents 15% tip on a $20 meal. So we are trying to find 15% of $20. So 15% can be written as a decimal and can also be written as a fraction. Let's go ahead and first write this as fraction form. So 15% is the same thing as 15 over 100 because all percentages are out of 100. Now that we have fraction form, we can go ahead and change that into a decimal because this line right here represents division. So 15 divided by 100 is the same thing as 1.15. So you might just see that we're just moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So if we are trying to find 15% of $20, and of represents multiplying, which of these expressions do you think would find 15% of 20? Now we're going to go ahead and select the expression that represents the total bill. So if I have a 15% tip, that means that there is a percent increase. So I'm going to go ahead and add my 15% to 100%. When I add 100% and 15%, I get 115%. Again, just like 15%, 115% can be written as a fraction, right? So it can be written as 115 over 100 because all percents are out of 100. It can also be written as a decimal by dividing by 100 or moving the decimal 2 places to the left, which is the same thing as 1.15. So based off of this information, which of these expressions represents the total bill if I'm looking for 115% of 20? Problem 1. We're going to use the sketch tool to draw a diagram that represents the following situation. So Cassie donated $80 to charity. So let's start by drawing a rectangle that represents $80. What percentage of is $80 in her donation? So what percentage does this $80 represent? Answer when the video stops. Hopefully you said 100%. The website charged an additional 10%. So I'm going to go ahead and draw outside of this 100% box and label this as an additional 10%. And again, I don't know yet what this value represents, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a question mark, or maybe you could write an X. Problem number 2. You're asked to write a description of a situation that matches this diagram. So remember, your situation needs to deal with the weight of polar bears. Your situation should also include the original weight of the polar bear. And then you can discuss if the polar bear has decreased and gone on a diet, or maybe gained some weight. All right, now time for a card sort. So I like to organize my card sorts so that the situations are all at the top and my equations are all at the bottom. Again, just because the equation is below doesn't mean that these two are a match. So we need to read through each situation. So Tay spends X dollars. Omar spends 1/4 less than that. So the way that we can think about this, or one way we can think about this, is that Omar spends less, right? So we're going to be doing some subtraction at some point. Let's go ahead and change 1/4 into a percent or a decimal. And I can do that by dividing 1 by 4. If I divide 1 by 4, I get 0.25, which is the same thing as 25%. So because Omar spends less than that, I'm going to subtract 0.25 from 1, and the 1 is representing 100. So if I do 1 minus 0.25, I'm going to get 0.75. So if I take a look at my equations down here, I can see that this equation would represent this situation. Tay drinks X ounces of juice. Omar drinks 13/10 more than that. So this is something that is more. So this one will be dealing with addition. So we'll be adding to 100% or we'll be adding to 1. So let's first change 13 over 10 into a decimal. We can do that by dividing 13 by 10 and hopefully getting 1.3. I want to add that 1.3 to 100%, and 100% is represented by the number 1. So I can add 1 and 1.3, and that'll give me 2.3. So that means that an equation that would match this situation would be y equals 3.2x. Now, Tay practices piano for X hours. Omar practices for 2/5 less than that. Let's go ahead and first change this fraction into a percent, or into a decimal, I'm sorry. Once you change this into a decimal, by dividing 2 by 5, you're going to subtract that from 100%. So divide this and subtract whatever you get from 100%. So will this situation be represented by y equals 0.6x or y equals 0.8x? For the last one, Tay sleeps for X hours, Omar sleeps for 1/5 less than that. Again, let's start by changing this into a decimal. We can do that by dividing 1 by 5. And whatever you get, because it's less than, you're going to subtract from 100. So would that situation be represented by y equals 0.6x or y equals 0.8x? So another card sort. Again, I organize my situations on the top and the equations on the bottom. So the first situation is Tay collects X pounds of recycling, Omar collects 3/5 less than that. Based off the steps that we discussed in the last slide, again, you can change this fraction into a decimal by dividing the top by the bottom, and because it's less than, you're going to subtract that from 1. Again, 1 represents 100%. So does this first situation, is it represented by this first equation, the second equation, the third equation, or the fourth equation? The next situation, Ty completes X puzzles, Omar completes 3/5 more than that. Remember, for this one, it's more than, so we're going to be adding to 1. Do you think this situation is represented by the first equation, the second equation, the third equation, or the fourth equation? The next one, Tay walks X kilometers, Omar walks 3/8 more than that. Change this into a decimal and add it to 1 because it's more than. Do you think this situation is represented by the first equation, the second equation, the third equation, or the fourth equation? Tay eats X grams of almonds, Omar eats 40% more than that. Again, because it's already 40%, we can change this into a decimal by moving the decimal place 2 places to the left, and because it's more than, we can add it to 1. Do we think that's the first equation, the second equation, the third equation, or the fourth equation? Let's take a look at problem number 4. For each description, write each percent increase or decrease as a percentage of the initial amount. Then write an equation for the situation. The first one is done for you. So the first description is there was 40% more snow this year than last year. So that means we're going to add 40% to 100%. That gives us 140%. And to write the equation, again, we need to change 140% into a decimal, and we can do that by dividing by 100 to get 1.4. Now we have a situation where there were 22 fewer sunny days this year than last year. So we're going to start by taking 100% and subtracting 22 from it, because there were 22 fewer sunny days. So go ahead and subtract. Hopefully you got 72%. That means the percent of initial amount would be 72%. Now we were going to go ahead and write the equation. So we're going to change 72% into a decimal. We can do that by dividing by 100 or moving the decimal place 2 places to the left. So that would give us 7.72. That means our equation would be y equals 0.72x. For the next one, there was a 8.5 increase in the number of houses sold this month compared to last month. So again, we're going to take our initial amount, which is always 100%. We're going to add, since there was an increase, and we're going to add 8.5% to it. When you add those together, you should get 108.5%. I want to divide that by 100, or move the decimal place 2 places to the left. So I would get 1.085. Based on that, what do you think? How do you think we would write our rule? So we'd get y equals something x. What would go in that blank? For the last one, we have a runner took 5.4% less time to complete a marathon this year than she did last year. Again, our initial amount is 100%. Because it took less time, we're going to subtract 5.4%. Hopefully you got 94.6%. We're going to divide that by 100 or move our decimal place 2 places to the left, and that should give you 0.946. Based off of that, if that's the percent of initial amount, how could we write our equation? What would our equation be using this info here? Problem 5. A store has a 30% off sale on shirts. With this discount, the price of one shirt is $15.40. So we're looking for the original price of the shirt. So our original values, or our old values, are what we've been given. So if there's a 30% off sale, that means that we would subtract 30 from 100 to get 70%. So our old price this time is going to be that 70%. Our new price is going to be the 100%. So we're looking for the original price of the shirt. Underneath 70%, I have that cost $15.40, and I need to figure out what I'm going to multiply by. I need to find my COP. I'm going to divide the new side by the old side, so I'm going to divide 100 by 70, and that's going to give me 1.428, and that's going to go on for a little bit. I'm going to round that to 1.4, so that means I'm going to call my COP 1.4. That means I can multiply $15.70 by 1.4, and that'll give me around $22. Problem 6. A college student takes out a $7,500 loan from a bank. Assuming that the student has not started paying back the money, how much does the student owe? So after a year, the bank charges a 3.8% interest each year. So let's take a look at the first T table. So if there is a 3.8% increase charge, I'm going to go ahead and add the 3.8% to 100%. That will give me 103.8%. Now, I need to figure out what I can multiply 100 by to get to 1.03.8 or 103.8. I can do that by dividing 103.8 by 100. Hopefully you got 1.038. That means we can multiply 7,500 by 1.08 to get our answer. Now, if after 1 year the bank charges 7.6% interest, again, we can add 100 and 7.6. That gives us 107.6%. We need to figure out what we can multiply 100 by to get 107.6. We can do that by dividing 107.6 by 100. Hopefully you got 1.076. And to find the new rate, or how much she owes, we can multiply 7,500 by 1.06. No, 1.076. Now, after 2 years, that changes the game, right? So if we have 2 years and the bank charges 3.8% each year, we want to go back to this first table up here. So because after 1 year with the 3.8% interest, the new rate was the answer that you got up here. And hopefully you got 77.85. So that means my new 100% would be that value. So 7.785. Again, there is a 3.8% increase for that second year. So I add that to 100. Again, I find my multiplier, and I would multiply my new 100%, 7,785, by my same COP, which is that 1.038. Now, I'd like you to do one of the following problems. So you're going to read the problem, you're going to read the answer, and you're going to explain how to get from the problem to the answer in much detail as possible. So here's problem 1. Here's another option. and here is your final option. So pick one of these